The girl who wrote letters to strangers. Charlotte Evans sat alone in a small apartment overlooking the streets of Boston. At 27 years old, she had everything she once thought she wanted. A respected job, a comfortable income, a beautiful apartment, a promising future, yet every evening she returned home feeling empty. The loneliness was difficult to explain. She was surrounded by people every day, coworkers, clients, neighbors, friends on social media. But somehow she felt invisible. One cold November night, Charlotte sat near her window watching snow fall onto the city streets. Across the road, she noticed an elderly woman sitting alone in another apartment. The woman stared quietly at a photograph for nearly an hour. Something about the scene touched Charlotte deeply. The woman looked lonely, not just alone. Lonely. Charlotte suddenly wondered how many people around her were carrying silent sadness. How many smiles hid pain. How many strangers desperately needed encouragement. The thought stayed with her for days. Then one evening she did something unusual. She took a blank sheet of paper and began writing. Dear stranger, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're facing. But if today feels difficult, please remember that difficult seasons do not last forever. Someone believes in you. Someone is rooting for you. And even if we never meet, I hope tomorrow brings you something beautiful. Sincerely, a friend. She folded the letter. The next morning she left it on a park bench. Then she forgot about it. A week later she wrote another. Then another. Soon it became a habit. Every weekend Charlotte placed encouraging letters around the city. Inside library books, on cafe tables, at bus stops, near hospital waiting rooms. Sometimes she attached small notes to flowers. Sometimes she slipped them inside newspapers. She never expected responses. She never signed her real name. She simply hoped someone might feel less alone. Months passed. Then one afternoon something unexpected happened. While buying coffee, Charlotte noticed a handwritten note pinned to a community bulletin board. It read, "To the person who left a letter near Boston General Hospital, thank you. I found it the day my father was undergoing surgery. I was terrified. Your words helped me stay strong. You will never know how much that meant." Charlotte stared at the note for several seconds. A smile slowly appeared. For the first time she realized her letters were reaching people. That evening she wrote 3 more, then 5, then 10. As time passed, similar messages began appearing around the city. Someone wrote, "I found your letter after losing my job. Thank you for giving me hope." Another message said, "Your note stopped me from giving up on a dream I've carried for years." And another, "I was having the worst day of my life. Your words reminded me that tomorrow exists." Charlotte kept every message inside a wooden box. Whenever life felt difficult, she read them. They reminded her that kindness mattered, even small kindness, especially small kindness. One rainy afternoon, Charlotte visited a bookstore. As she browsed through shelves, she noticed a young man reading one of her letters. The note had somehow found its way inside a used novel. The man smiled as he read, then carefully folded the paper and placed it inside his wallet. Charlotte never introduced herself, but seeing the impact firsthand filled her heart with warmth. For years she continued writing. Hundreds of letters, then thousands. The city never learned her identity. People simply referred to her as the letter friend. One winter morning, Charlotte received devastating news. Her mother had been diagnosed with a serious illness. The diagnosis changed everything. Hospital visits became routine. Fear became constant. For the first time in years, Charlotte struggled to remain positive. Some nights she sat beside her mother's bed crying silently. Other nights she stared at the ceiling wondering why life could be so cruel. The letters became less frequent, then they stopped entirely. Weeks passed, then months. Without realizing it, Charlotte had lost the strength she once shared so freely with others. One evening she left the hospital exhausted. Snow drifted through the air. The city looked quiet. As she walked toward her car, something caught her attention. A folded piece of paper rested beneath her windshield wiper. Confused, she opened it. "Dear stranger, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're facing. But if today feels difficult, please remember that difficult seasons do not last forever. Someone believes in you. Someone is rooting for you. And even if we never meet, I hope tomorrow brings you something beautiful. Sincerely, a friend." Charlotte froze. Those were her words, her exact words. Tears immediately filled her eyes. Someone had copied one of her letters. Someone had left it for her. For several moments she stood in silence. Then she laughed through tears. For years she had given hope to strangers. Now hope had returned to her. The next morning she found another note, then another, and another. Soon she realized dozens of people had started writing letters inspired by hers. A movement had begun. Without intending to, Charlotte had created something much larger than herself. People across the city were leaving encouraging messages for strangers. Bus drivers, teachers, students, doctors, retirees, parents, teenagers. The kindness kept spreading. Months later, Charlotte's mother passed away peacefully. The grief was overwhelming, yet during the funeral something extraordinary happened. Hundreds of people attended, many Charlotte had never met. After the service, people approached her carrying handwritten letters. One by one they shared stories. A teacher explained how her letters helped during depression. A veteran described finding hope after years of loneliness. A young woman admitted that one letter arrived on the darkest day of her life. Each story reminded Charlotte of something important. Pain travels, but kindness travels too, and often much farther. Years later, the movement spread beyond Boston. Letters appeared in other cities, other states, even other countries. Nobody knew exactly where it started. Most people had never heard Charlotte's name, and she preferred it that way, because the story was never about her. It was about ordinary people choosing kindness. One spring afternoon, nearly 10 years after writing her first letter, Charlotte sat on a bench overlooking the harbor. Beside her sat a teenage girl. The girl appeared nervous. After several minutes, she handed Charlotte a folded note. "I wanted you to have this." Charlotte opened it. Inside were simple words. "Dear Charlotte, you don't know me. But when I was 14 years old, I found one of your letters. I was struggling. I felt invisible. Your words helped me keep going. Today I'm graduating high school. Next year I'm attending college. Thank you for reminding me that hope exists." With gratitude, Emma Charlotte finished reading and looked toward the ocean. The sun reflected across the water. The wind carried the sounds of the city behind her. For a moment, she thought about that first lonely evening years ago. The evening when she wrote a simple letter to a stranger. She never imagined what would follow, never imagined how many lives would be touched, never imagined how much her own life would change. The teenage girl smiled. "You changed a lot of lives." Charlotte shook her head gently. "No, we changed each other's lives." Because she had learned something powerful. Kindness is never wasted. A smile, a kind word, a helping hand, a letter. Even the smallest act can become a light in someone else's darkness. And sometimes, when life becomes difficult, that same light finds its way back to the person who first shared it. That is how hope survives. One heart at a time, one act of kindness at a time, one stranger at a time.